Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. My name is Joe Swimmer. I am the Executive Director of Episcopal Parish Network, and we are so pleased to have you joining us today for this really important webinar about understanding your parish assets and mapping them for the future, and then understanding how to protect them for generations to come. We are pleased to be joined by our friends and members at the Church of the Transfiguration, the FIG, recent hosts of our conference during the virtual year. Thank you for joining us to Transfiguration, our friends at Building Solutions and at CCS Fundraising. So this should be a lovely interactive session, and we're looking forward to a lot of good conversation and answering questions about the process that the FIG went through to understand what their assets were, how to protect them into the future. Please remember that we will be gathering the network together in Houston, a little bit south of the FIG, March 6th through 9th. And we do hope that those of you who have not registered will do so and join us down at the Galleria for some in-person conversation along these same lines. And we also have several other upcoming digital workshops like this that you can keep your eye on our website for more information about. So that's a lot for me. I am done. And now I am going to hand it off to Casey, the rector at the FIG. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you to our panelists.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Casey Shobe. I'm the rector here at Church of the Transfiguration. Thank you for tuning in. We hope that this is a worthwhile session, a good use of your time. Good afternoon to those of you who are in time zones in the afternoon, and to those of you out on the West Coast, good morning to you. We have a story to tell you today. I have a feeling none of it is particularly novel. None of it is, earth-shattering or groundbreaking, but nevertheless, it's a story that we feel like contains wisdom, the wisdom of hard-earned wisdom earned from experience. And the people who are joining me today have a lot of that wisdom as well. So in just a minute, I'm going to tell you a little bit of the story. And then we really want to hear from you. We want to address the questions that y'all are coming with today. If you saw this header, this title of a webinar, and you were drawn to it, you were attracted to it, you thought it was worth an hour of your time in a busy day, we want to make sure that we're talking to the questions that you have. So please do not hesitate as we go along to drop those questions into the chat so that we can do our best in the time that we are preserving, probably about 2/3 of the time of this webinar, that we just want to try to answer your questions. But I want to allow everyone who's on this a chance to introduce themselves. We have 3 different organizations: Transfiguration, Building Solutions, and the person from Building Solutions is also a Transfiguration person as well, coincidentally. But that is not actually directly relevant to the role that Building Solutions plays. So I'll let Bill introduce himself, and then friends from CCS who are essential to the work as well. Bill, I don't know, maybe you want to go first and introduce yourself?
Sure, I'll be happy to. Thanks, Casey. My name is Bill Kessler. I'm CEO of Building Solutions. We're a 40-year-old company that primarily works for churches and independent schools, private schools, many of whom are associated with churches, and a great many, of course, with Episcopal parishes. Our mission as a company, if I put it in a thumbnail, is to help make facilities meaningful to those clients, those institutions who engage us. And it's primarily through strategic capital planning, program management, and other services having to do with the ongoing without actually being the operators, supporting the operations of facilities like the ones that probably many of you have.
CCS folks, love to have you all introduce yourselves as well.
Great. Thanks so much, Casey. And thanks so much, Bill. Glad to be on this panel with you today. I'll start and then turn it over to my colleague, Alex. I'm Maeve Riley. I'm a Senior Vice President with CCS Fundraising. CCS Fundraising, just to copy Bill's frame of a mission statement, if we were to say it succinctly, we partner with nonprofit organizations for transformational change. Most often that is in the topic that we'll be exploring today, capital campaign planning and management. But we touch anything within an organization that touches fundraising. So everything from strategic planning to board recruitment and training to your annual drive. We are proud of our work in the Episcopal space, Transfiguration being one of many parishes that we have the pleasure of partnering with across the country. I am based here in Dallas, so I have the good fortune of seeing many of you down at the conference in Houston this summer. Please forgive the heat that we'll be bringing to it, but very excited for today's conversation and to continue that as we explore the case study. I'll turn it over to Alex.
Thanks, Maeve. And I'm Alex Bruin. I had the great privilege of being the campaign director, working alongside and supporting Father Casey through this most incredible process. And I like to say I'm also an honorary member of the Transfiguration Parish. So
Indeed.
Very glad to be with all of you today.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so y'all, I'm gonna take just a handful of minutes to tell you the story of how we navigated the last 5 years, because it's really the last 5 years that is the story that I think is directly relevant and what we have to share with you, how we have gained this wisdom. So the church here, Transfiguration, is blessed with beautiful buildings and grounds, like all of your churches, wherever you may be. And while we are not a particularly historic church, we're only about 70 years old. Our congregation's history is only about 70 years. Nevertheless, we experience all the same challenges that all of you face to be stewards of what we've inherited, stewards of a campus. Wherever you are, you're a steward of that campus, whether it's downtown, suburban, small town, large city. That's us. Big city, suburban context, about 10 acres. Well, Jesus says that where 2 or 3 are gathered, he will be in the midst of them. Well, where they gather, there are going to be roofs and there are going to be air conditioners, and there's going to be a whole lot of other stuff that breaks and wears out and needs replacement and needs maintenance. And so that's what we've been about, trying to be about as a congregation. So for the last 5 years or so, we've been pursuing our capital maintenance with commitment and with zeal even. And as a result, we feel like we're doing something that is of sacred importance for our community. We feel like we are creating a better future for those who will inherit from us. The bulk of this 5-year effort has centered around a capital campaign, that we conducted with a singular focus of caring for what already is rather than constructing something new. So many capital campaigns in so many places are about adding something long desired, long hoped for, needed even. This campaign was not that. This has been focused almost exclusively on just caring for what already is. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit more of this story, and that's really everything that we're going to talk about, our 3 organizations, the church, Building Solutions, and CCS. So I came in 2014 to serve as rector here. And not long after I came, I learned the story of one of those long desired new additions, something that the church had hoped for years and never been able to build. And that is a chapel, an alternative worship space for prayer and small services. This is something that goes back in the history of Transfiguration and off and on has been entertained seriously. When I came, there was a hope that maybe we would be able to accomplish that. So a few years later, in 2017, essentially, a couple came into my office and presented me with an unsolicited gift of $500,000 to help build this chapel. And I still have the note sitting behind my desk that they handed me because they wrote it out and they gave me the dedication. And It wasn't for themselves. They were giving it in honor of someone else. I mean, I kept all of this. It was such a profound meeting. An unsolicited gift of $500,000 is just something you never forget, right? So that left me with the enormous question of now what, left the vestry with the enormous question of now what, because we were not ready to even entertain such a project. We were thinking maybe it's a one day, but it was not something we were ready for imminently. So we did what churches do. We put an ad hoc committee together. We called it the Chapel Discernment Committee. What are we going to do with $500,000? We can't build a chapel because it wasn't nearly enough money. We knew that fairly quickly. We had enough expertise in our vestry to help us know that this was not going to be even remotely close to enough money to build a chapel. So we began to study, well, what would the chapel be for, et cetera, et cetera. We just asked questions. We did the work. We did discernment. We had about 4 sessions gathering people together, asking these questions, reflecting on them, and starting to gather information. 4 sessions in, there was a turn, and the turn happened around the same time that we began to very much to take seriously a document we've been holding on to but not doing much with, which was our facilities audit. A summary, not a summary, an itemized list in quite extensive detail of all of the capital needs, maintenance needs, facility care needs that our campus was going to require over a span of about 15 years. So we had this $500,000 dedicated toward a chapel, and it served as a kind of catalyst in that moment because we were thinking about adding additional square footage to our campus. It served as a kind of catalyst to get us to think about, well, we haven't even been able to pay for all the maintenance on this facilities audit. How can we consider in good faith adding yet more space to a campus we have not demonstrated an ability to maintain to this point? So that ad hoc committee, the Chapel Discernment Committee, pivoted, and we renamed it. It became the Capital Discernment Committee. And so we went from discerning what's the chapel for, how big would it be, how much money would it take, et cetera, to what are the needs of the campus? How are we going to address these? What's urgent and important? What's in that intersection of urgent and important? And how are we going to tend to those so that we could then free ourselves up to do this dreaming again of long desired spaces like a chapel? So we took that facility audit, a comprehensive survey of the campus. Bill Kessler is going to be able to tell you all about that as we go along. Essentially, it gave us a kind of bottom line. It gave us a bottom line. We actually then, because our existing facility audit at that point was just enough dated, it was about 5 years old at that point. And Bill can tell you more about how, every 5 years is a good time frame to update a facilities audit, because it's just a good thing to keep fresh. So then during that process of the Capital Discernment Committee, we updated our facility audit after 5 years. We got fresh numbers. We got a fresh bottom line. That told us what we needed to know. It was daunting. It was very intimidating. It was sobering. We had $3 million worth of imminent maintenance needs on our campus, from roofs that needed replacement to air conditioners that needed replacement to walkways and trip hazards and fire code safety stuff, you name it. It was all kinds of safety and security, roof and water penetration, electrical, lighting, all kinds of different things added up to roughly $3 million. And we began to think not only about how are we going to do this, $3 million just to fix a bunch of stuff, but also what happens when we finish doing these $3 million worth of fixing stuff? How are we going to pay for the stuff that the facility audit tells us is coming in 5 years, which is also significant and even daunting? And we began to project out what an annual proper expenditure from the church to care for the campus would be. And it was, $150,000 to $200,000 plus every year. So we realized we were going to need to prepare for that future as well. Not just what are we going to do today or next year, but what are we going to do 5 years from now? What are we going to do 10 years from now? And we pulled all this information together, and Bill, again, can tell you more about that. That's when we drew CCS in. CCS was our partner in figuring out how we're going to raise this money. Can we even do this? Is this even possible? Can you raise millions of dollars just to fix a bunch of stuff? And they came in and helped us create a case, gauge our community's willingness to participate and support us. They gauged whether we could actually accomplish this. And ultimately, through their preliminary partnership with us, they helped us determine that, yes, we actually could do this. We could raise these millions, ultimately 6 million that we aspired to raise at the outset. So we set out to do this campaign to raise $6 million to fix a bunch of stuff at the start of 2020. And that campaign lasted about a week. And then COVID. And then we postponed. And we waited a year. And we relaunched the next year in 2021, still in lockdown, or not lockdown, but not back in person. And we did it. This congregation stepped up in that weird 2021 in a campaign to raise millions of dollars to fix things. They did it. We did it. And we even stretched to an aspirational goal, raised a 7th million. Ultimately, we were able to raise exactly what we set out to raise. And now, 2.5 years later, we are doing a lot of that work. We are implementing our plan, spending the now it's actually going to be even more than that, $1 million to fix the things, which has actually led us back. And this is where I want to ask for the slide to get thrown up there, if you don't mind, Lexi. This has led us back in a kind of a loop, because now we're 5 years out again. So we were 5 years out. Originally, we updated our facility audit. We're 5 years out again from that second facility audit, and Building Solutions is partnered with us to update it again, because now we're looking ahead again. We're trying to figure out, do we still have enough for what we need to do what we know we need to do, which is to be good stewards. So we've kind of identified this loop, this circuit of how our project has worked. We began with discernment, identifying the need. That was that capital discernment committee, which led us into an update of our facility audit, analytical evaluation. This is all discernment. That happened over the span of almost 2 years, really. Engaging perspectives of CCS, helping partner with us, who then helped us determine that we could do it and that the support was there, created a plan with us, launched a campaign, paused the campaign, relaunched a campaign, drew in significant supporters who helped us. Any of you who've raised money, you have to find some key catalyzing gifts, transformational gifts, and we were able to do that. Raised that money over a span of months, stretched, raised a 7th million, and celebrated. And now we're in the implementation phase, that eighth point, which has actually brought us back around, because now with an updated facility audit, we are identifying needs and analyzing things again. We're actually re-engaging Building Solutions and thinking more about how to raise the additional money we might need down the road in order to ensure that we have what we need. Because part of our campaign was fixing it. Part of it was raising $3 million to create an endowment to ensure we can constantly pay for the fixes that are necessary in the future. So I went longer than I intended. I want to pause. I want to see if Bill Kessler has any thoughts about this. I know we're going to hear from Alex, who was essential to us when we got into the fundraising piece, but Bill, I know that word discernment has been important to you, and you, of course, wear two hats. You're a FIG parishioner, but you also run this important organization, this business who helps folks do this work. So I wonder what you think about any of this.
Well, I want to try to be brief because we have a lot of questions already out there, and I want to honor those. I would let me try to be really brief. First, I had the honor of serving on that discernment committee also, so I can tell you firsthand that it was a really humbling experience, I think, for all of us to be involved in, recognizing, really coming to terms with, even though I do this for a living, coming to terms with the realities as a shared steward of this facility that's really important to us, to realize what a daunting task it would be. But I was also just steeped in admiration for how courageously this group addressed the realities. I think if I could summarize the kinds of things that I think are most important in this, particularly if you're undertaking it for the first time, is that there be trust. Trust in the leadership, trust in the roadmap, and trust in the vision. That part comes pretty naturally to us because we have great leadership, not only as clergy, as you can tell, or any of you who know Casey. He's a guy we very readily trust, and he lives up to everything that he says. But we also have some very trusted lay leadership that really paved the way for this. So I have said many times, and I'm not objective in this way, but I've said many times that I admire how Transfiguration took on something that very few churches are able to or are willing to. So, and that's one reason we wanted to come and tell the story that, hey, this is really doable, and hopefully out of this we can help you feel moved to do whatever is appropriate for your churches. I'll probably find ways to weave in some of my other thoughts, Casey, in answering questions.
That's great. That I want to piggyback real quickly, and then I'm curious what Alex or Maeve has to say. What you just said is the most important thing. I want to make sure that all of y'all who are joining us today know that if you have a campus, I want to definitely say this is doable. Doing big campaigns that are focused on stewardship of your campus and not on building something new or adding something glamorous or some dream, but simply demonstrating care and maintaining what you have inherited, it is doable. With the right information, with utilizing organizations who give you clear data, and then partnering together with your congregation's leadership and deploying those skills that you have, it is doable. I mean, somebody has asked in the questions, what's the ratio of our church to the campaign church budget? Our budget is about $2 million. Our campaign was $7 million. It's a $7 million campaign that is not essentially going to add a single square foot of anything to anything. I mean, it's a campaign to fix stuff, air conditioners, roofs. We put a solar roof on the church. That was pretty stinking cool. That's like a whole different webinar. But this was all about caring for it. I just want to tell you, if you came here wondering, is this doable? It is doable. Alex, Maeve, I don't know if you have anything else before we try to answer some of the questions that people are coming with.
Yeah, thanks, Casey. And I think Alex and I have been tracking the questions. We're eager to dive in, but I just want to summarize again, just what you and Bill were able to share from a fundraising perspective. These elements are so important. Number one, even though we look through that cycle and it is cyclical, you're coming back around to it, and that's natural for, you know, and any church to think about not only where you are right now as you're collecting the pledges from this campaign, but looking ahead to there's going to be another project after this. And I think the pieces that stood out to us with this case study, and Bill, how you articulated this so well, and you as well, Casey, is the necessity to revisit plans. And from a fundraising perspective, plans are going to shift, but to really start with and go back to any facility plan that you have as a starting point. From a donor perspective, they're going to want to know that you have a master's facilities plan in place. That is oftentimes a question that we receive when we go through a campaign planning or feasibility study process. We're testing the donor potential to support capital projects and elements, and they want to know how anything fits into a larger picture. And oftentimes when we do test new spaces, donors and the congregation may ask, well, what about the existing space? Have we totally exhausted it? So I think this notion of not always assuming that donors want something new is really important as you're evaluating your space and the needs for kind of the here and now. I think just building on that, we also find it challenging to create a compelling case for facility maintenance. And it's really important to message this in a way that speaks to donors in an inspirational way and connects to the legacy, the space that they are so passionate about, maintaining that space. And so, well, oftentimes we may hear, we don't want to fund the HVAC system, but if you position it as, we want to make sure that we are preserving this space, that it's comfortable as new members come in and celebrate with us. And we can really find a compelling way to fundraise for things like an HVAC system, right? So I think just these points really stand out to us of where there's opportunity within the facility audit to also leverage all of those findings and pieces on the fundraising side. And I think the final point that stood out to Alex and I with this case study is really thinking about parallel track. So again, while it's cyclical, the fundraising effort, the work, you know, Casey, that you did with Bill and his team on the facility side, that there's so much benefit to look at those phasing together rather than starting one piece and then picking up the other. But we're eager to dive into questions, but Alex and I did want to offer and underscore those pieces as well.
Maeve, that's so good. What was important to us to gain trust of donors, and also to Bill's earlier point, we weren't speaking in an abstract. It wasn't just anecdotal, like, yeah, and the roof needs a fix, and, you know, gosh, like these carpets could sure use, you know, some updating. The facility audit gave professional expert review of the campus from top to bottom, comprehensive. And that allowed us to create a highly technical and highly professional guiding framework that was not just anecdotal, so that when we were sitting in front of the individuals or the whole congregation in annual meetings or addresses, when I was communicating, I wasn't just kind of winging it. I was relying on this and this framework of important information, which, again, as I said earlier, was very sobering. I mean, who wants to be told you've got millions of dollars worth of stuff that you've not been fixing, that you need to fix really soon? Like it or not, here it is. So without that, I think we would have had a much harder time. So I want to encourage anyone who is struggling with this to lean into the partnership of working with an organization like a Building Solutions, because it gives you the solidity of professional expertise. so that when you're talking to a congregation about a fix-it campaign, you can say to them, here it is. It's a 5-page spreadsheet, and I'm happy to sit down with you and show it to you. But we have $750,000 worth of air conditioners to replace, and y'all better believe that in Texas, that gets people's attention. Air conditioners is like the thing people talk about here, whether they operate or not, and other things. So you're just able to work through it, and that was super helpful to us. Alex, I want to make sure if you have anything to add before we look at some of these questions.
I'd say let's dive into the question.
You got it.
We're at lots of really great questions being asked.
I don't know if anyone wants to curate these. I see that is $7 million outside of your annual budget. Most definitely. It existed because our annual budget was unable to generate anything remotely close to what we needed on an annual basis to pay for the repairs. So the campaign, the campaign happened because the annual budget couldn't do what it needed to do. So a $2 million annual budget is a nice round number with a $7 million campaign. And to answer the question of what happened to annual giving during and after, I can tell you what happened, but I also want to say that we launched this campaign in 2021 in the particular context of the pandemic. So I think, like all of y'all have no doubt experienced, what may have been true 10 years ago it's hard to extract clear to deduce clear information from what happened in the pandemic because it was such a unique context. Our giving essentially remained flat. Our operational giving, our annual stewardship essentially remained flat for those 2021, 2022, 2023. Finally, this year in 2024, the dam has broken and we've seen operational giving now surge upward. We were able to hold the line and maintain a flat level of annual giving for those years while the campaign was launching, getting going, and the vast majority of those gifts were being made.
Casey, I could pick up one that I think I could answer briefly, and there are a lot of great questions here. Is there a standard facilities audit for a church? There are industry standards for condition assessment of real estate and of buildings. They really fall, we find that they fall far short of what's needed for something like this. The American Society of Testing Material, ASTM, has a protocol, and I wish I could remember the name, but you could find it. You could Google it, I'm sure. That's a starting point for companies that do things like advise homeowners associations in condo complexes and the like, or someone who's buying an office building. But it's really a very fundamental baseline. I think rather than relying on something like that, it could be a starting point to begin to educate, socialize this idea with a vestry, but you would be best served looking deeper than that. And probably, I mean, you're welcome to contact us and we'll send you sort of what we consider to be a standard protocol, our standard protocol, or talk with any firm that does this. But I cannot point you to an industry standard that is uniform, that's adopted by everyone.
I love this question on how to pitch a fundraising request that's aimed at existing buildings versus the excitement of a new building. The best thing I can say about that, CCS obviously does this way more than I ever do, but when I think about, have you ever sold a car and because you're ready to, get a new car and you need to sell your car. So you take it to the car wash place and you spring for the extra bucks to get it detailed. And at the end of that, the car's all freshly washed and waxed and detailed. And you're like, God, this car's not so bad after all, is it? Huh? Looks pretty good. We have 100% experienced this. When you replace 50-year-old light fixtures with fresh lighting, when you update your walkways and put in ADA ramps in places that needed it, when you update your air conditioning that has been limping along for a couple of years, and all of a sudden it's a blast chiller in the summer. When you do these things that you didn't actually do anything new, but you breathed fresh life into spaces, and I'm going to assume that your space, like my space, is a place that people love. Like, people love it. They have such pride in it. But when you do those things to tend to it, to care for it, and to even improve upon it, there is instantaneous satisfaction and a kind of reminder of why it is that we love this place to begin with. So when I think about launching a campaign, we focused on, gosh, we love this place so much. And Maeve was talking about this. We love this place so much. This is ours. And we want our children and our grandchildren and people we will never meet to walk in here and be filled with the same gratitude and pride that we do. And before we can ever even imagine doing something new, adding anything new, as lovely as that might one day be, let's make sure that we've done right by what exists. And I tell you, that was such an easy conversation to have. It was not hard. I mean, all money can be hard to raise because it takes effort, but it wasn't like I was trying to bait and switch anyone or trick anyone into it and convince them of something. That they just needed to be reminded that this was important to invest in. And then people were very generous.
Yeah, and Father Casey, I'd like to just add here too. You messaged that so brilliantly, and I think one of the great successes of this campaign was your role in communicating that across the parish. Father Casey took on a true leadership role in not just like facilitating the discernment process, but then making sure that the message was appropriately received by all parishioners, our volunteers, and then also ensuring that other clergy members within the parish were able to similarly communicate with such clarity, and then helping the volunteers carry on that message to those that they were speaking with about the campaign. Mm-hmm. So it just can't be understated how important, or overstated how important your voice was in leading the message in the parish itself.
I mean, that for those who are tuning in, I mean, for those who enjoy, I actually like raising money. I like helping people give their money away. So I don't struggle to be involved in these things. For those, I know that's not true for everybody though. I do think with a stewardship campaign of what exists, it's very important because it doesn't necessarily sell itself. So embracing the role, the unique opportunity there is for a leader or leaders to be out front and really communicating that. I think that's just really essential. And we have, I'm sure like y'all, people who've been here 50 years and people who are new, cross-pollinating those folks, people who remembered when things were built new, talking to people who had come here later and were eager for, some refreshments, some new updating to things. That was really important too. It wasn't just one or the other. Getting them all mixing and mingling was helpful.
Unless CCS wants to pick up one of the questions, I
go for it, Bill.
Another one might be the 5-year audits. I'm reading the question. The quote, 5-year audits seem to be the driving force. How do you track and manage issues outside the audits, i.e., an air conditioning unit might have a 7 to 12-year lifespan. How do you track that in year 3? Let me try to briefly describe a little more precisely what the database looks like, which is one part of the facility audit. First, just background, the audit itself is prepared following observations of a whole team of people, specialists in various building systems. All of their reports are combined in a single comprehensive uniform report. And there's a database that is prepared that it wasn't quite 5 pages, Casey, but close to it.
Indeed.
It was every bit of $2.5 million.
Yes. Yeah.
So that and each of those items has a cost associated with it. There's an estimated cost to remedy the deficiency. Some of the deficiencies are past due maintenance. They're considered deferred maintenance. The rest of the items are forecasted to be ready for replacement, and the year that it's anticipated to be ready for replacement is identified in this database, and it goes out 15 to 20 years depending on what you engage your consultant to do. So it's multidimensional. It's multidimensional in that every individual building system in each individual building is identified, the year in which it is anticipated to need to be remedied, whether that's immediate or next year or 5 years from now, that's identified. Also whether it's considered to be a capital replacement, which is usually an accounting definition, whether it's a capital item or should be part of your regular maintenance program, which is highly dependent on how your budget is put together. So nothing is outside the audit, frankly. There are some audits that might be more comprehensive in scope than others. That is, some out of just for financial reasons, economic reasons, a church might engage to have an audit done that is limited in some ways, truncated, where we're not looking at handicap accessibility, perhaps, or we're not looking at interior finishes. We're just looking at the more of the infrastructure elements of the campus. That's never the best choice, but it may be the better choice rather than not doing it at all. Mm-hmm. So it then becomes the roadmap, the tool, the trusted common ground that everyone is looking at and believing in and making their individual decisions about, whether they're a junior warden or a potential donor.
Casey, this is Bill. There's a few questions early on I'd like to throw out. They should be pretty simple answers, but one of the question is, what type of firm did perform your facility audit?
Well, that's why Building Solutions is here, y'all. That's Bill Kessler and his organization. He has all this expertise in this that he's been sharing with you. So we partnered with Building Solutions.
Wonderful. Another one is, was this a restricted donation?
Was I'm
That's
maybe
in
not.
regard-
The first gift.
The first gift.
Oh, so ultimately, it was, and we set it aside and actually came up with a memo of understanding with the donors and didn't touch it. Actually, we put it in CDs. It grew very nicely. And we have, since we are not building the chapel, I was able to re-engage those donors. And a lot of the work that we're doing is actually in our church itself. And the donors this last year gave us permission to use those funds for the renovations happening in the church, where we will actually convert one of our transepts into a chapel that it can be utilized as a chapel. So we're able to accomplish that dream. It's not quite the same as a standalone chapel, but we're able to honor that dream enough that the donors felt comfortable freeing the restriction on that and enabling us to deploy it into the wider campaign. So by having a trusting relationship, by demonstrating that we were taking care of their gift and that it wasn't getting just absorbed into it, that we were honoring them, they felt like they could free it for us. So yes, it was originally restricted, ultimately given freely.
I'd like to just append, and there's a both and solution to many of these paradoxes that we face about where to dedicate the money. A lot of the deficiencies that needed to be identified, that needed to be corrected, that were identified in the facility audit, are being handled at the same time. as that renovation project. It goes way beyond correcting those deficiencies. But one of the things that I think has been helpful is that we see that we're retiring some of the needs that were going to be there anyway by doing projects that are also attractive improvements. I think I've seen that in our 30-some years of doing this for churches and schools, having a few things out there, like we did a kitchen renovation that was long past due, that was identified in the audit. We have this transept renovation and a few other things, not many, but enough that people feel rewarded by it, and it's not all above the ceiling or on the roof kinds of things.
That was important. Like the solar roof, the kitchen, these things that people actually could see or really feel a deeper visceral connection with. That was important, even though it strictly fell under care and maintenance. A couple of quick questions. Did we go after grants or any other kinds of loans? Here, there were no grants available. Again, we're not a historic building. There were no entities that were going to give us any kind of grants. We could have considered loans, but because we were trying to free ourselves from financial obligations, we really wanted to not take on any projects or bite them off with loans, because that kind of felt like it was running counter to the whole underlying philosophy of the campaign. So everything we have done, we have paid for ourselves. One other part of that is, we've raised now in pledges about a little over 7 million. We've raised cash in hand so far to date about 5. And part of that was supposed to be part of that was 3 million for a sustainability fund, essentially creating an endowment to spin off proceeds that enable us to pay for care and maintenance in the future. And that has been the last of the cash that we received, because we've needed all the initial cash to do the work. And the last of the cash in the campaign that we've received is what is supposed to go in the fund. We are probably going to have to do a stretch campaign again to make sure that fund gets all of the $3 million, because we've done a bunch of calculating ahead to the future. And we know that without 3 million committed and put into that fund, that we forecast out 15 years and it goes down and it disappears. And then we're back in the same boat. So that's part of that circle at the beginning, needs assessment, analyzing, fundraising. So we're a little bit back in that to make sure that we accomplish everything we set out to do.
And Casey, just to add on to that point, I want to offer one piece, and I believe Alex has some thoughts too. But going back to the question around grants and loans, you addressed the strategy around the loans quite well. Oftentimes, churches do need to tackle loans as part of a campaign budget. In those instances too, we want to think about employing strategies where you can engage donors to support the capital build, but also help to offset some of those loans too. So we do even see campaigns that are run strictly to bring the loan debt down as standalone campaigns. So thinking more about a comprehensive strategy. The one piece too we want to just say about grants is that many of you in the call probably have experienced this in your fundraising efforts, but foundations will want to know how much you've raised already, what pending gifts you have, how many donors are already in. So the strategy to engage foundations through grants, if you're thinking about private grants and not public grants, just consider that you need to have traditionally a certain amount of funding in for foundations. They want to know that you've already started the fundraising efforts and that funders are behind this. The other piece too is just the caution to very much evaluate the foundation granting guidelines, because some do not support building projects or capital campaigns. Some also do not support endowment. So the other piece too, when we think about approaching a capital build or maintaining current buildings, that's a great opportunity to talk to your donors and your members about endowment opportunities to support that. So we traditionally see that more on the individual side than the foundation granting side. But Alex, I know that you have some thoughts you wanted to add to this topic as well.
Yeah, great. Jim, you asked a great question about, what if we're coming up a little bit short on our campaign goal? So there's a couple of different strategies that can be pursued. And Father Casey mentioned that kind of stretch period. One thing is maybe going back to those lead gift donors and asking them, would they extend their pledge by a year or two? Could that help kind of close that gap? Is there an opportunity maybe from one or two of those lead donors in the original go round to consider a special gift that could be used as a challenge, a matching challenge that could be posed to the parish community? That's another great way to leverage some momentum and build support behind an idea. And then third, ensuring, if you haven't already done so, that you're drawing in new parishioners into the campaign itself. Transfiguring our foundations at Transfiguration was such a community effort, and it was important that as new parishioners joined, they knew about it. They had awareness of how important this was, and where appropriate, were invited to join in on this effort. So don't be afraid to go back to some of those key donors, consider extending their pledges, see if there's a lead gift opportunity, maybe leverage that as a matching challenge to the rest of the parish, and then ensure that you're drawing in new parishioners. Those are just a few quick steps to handle that, closing that gap.
Yeah, so to piggyback on that, we're going to need a little bit of extra help making sure like I said, we get the $3 million in the sustainability fund, which we know we absolutely have to have. So we are at this point, in order to do all the care and maintenance expensive projects, which have gotten only much more expensive because of the pandemic than we originally thought of and forecasted from that 2018 facilities audit, we're asking all of our donors to add a 6th year to a 5-year campaign. And we feel very confident that with a few other lead gift second gifts, not crazy, but that will get us across that final gap to make sure that we accomplish everything, fund everything fully. Were all of the $7 million donations from the church? Yes, every bit of it. We usually have a little over 400 pledging units for operations. We had a little over 300 pledging units for the campaign. So 3/4 of our congregation gave to this. That was the buy-in. To Alex's point, there was huge buy-in on this to repair and maintain. No, we are not from Highland Park. Somebody asked. We must be a Highland Park church. We are not. This is a church not of millionaires. This is a church of double professionals and wonderful, generous people. But there was $1 million gift to get us to 7 million. There were a handful of 6-figure gifts. Most of our gifts were $25,000 and $50,000. Lots of gifts, $10,000 to $12,000 to $18,000. We raised $7 million, like we raise our operations on ordinary folks with double incomes or single incomes in single family single adult households. There was no couple of families that I went and had a great conversation with, and they just floated this whole thing. That is not how this worked.
Steve has asked, has or was there ever options to decommission, sell off, or repurpose campus assets? That's probably not as applicable a question for us, although we do share a site with a parish school. And there clearly have been some buildings that are more aged, that are less useful than they used to be. I wanted to pick up that question because I would urge you, when you undertake the facility audit, that you make sure it's done contextually. Many owners of property, like campuses, like churches, schools, have a master plan, or at least they have some vision of how they will eventually transition buildings over time. If you don't, you probably should think about it if you have a multi-building campus or a large piece of property. But It's really important that the information that you get is, because it is data that you are helping you make long-term decisions. Yes, it should be updated. It should be updated every 3 years, 5 years max. But if it's done in isolation without consideration of how the buildings their use might be changing, or or decommissioned or sold off, you're making a big mistake, because you're going to have you'll just have data. You won't have really good operating information.
I think we have time for one more question. I think there's good questions here, y'all. Combating campaign. Oh, go ahead.
Go. That is it. Campaign fatigue.
Yeah,
that
the campaign fatigue. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll take a crack at it, but then CCS they're the professionals. We did an intense focused campaign, and then we don't try to just keep this in front of everybody's face all the time. But for the first year after we wrapped the formal fundraising period, we did quarterly updates to the parish, like, what's the work we've been doing? You have pledged all this money. What are we doing with it? And we do these quarterly updates that are mailed and emailed. Then after 2 years of doing that, now we do more like an annual update on that. So we celebrate what is being accomplished, because it's not one single building. We get to celebrate wins more often. That has helped buoy and keep people's enthusiasm up and combat some of that fatigue.
Yeah, I would just summarize that, Casey. Also, you alluded to this, but Transfig has an incredible campaign continuation committee that I just love, and still stay in touch with their chair. But it's really about that stewarding the relationships, maintaining that excitement, ensuring that the parish is up to date. You guys, like you said, have done an incredible job, keeping the messaging fresh, being able to show the work that's being done. And then if you're in active campaigning period, ensure that you're phasing the ask, that you're taking a phased approach. Because if you try to do everything all at once, people really are going to get exhausted. You know, the leadership obviously is going to be moving at lightning speed, but you need your volunteers to stay fresh. And so having that phased approach really kind of focuses on that, and then making sure that you're staying engaged with your new members.
Absolutely. All right. I know that it is 3 o'clock, and we want to honor everybody's time. In the chat are email addresses or contact ways to reach the organizations. CCS, I know, would love to hear from y'all, as would Bill at Building Solutions, with questions, curiosities about the work they do or this particular project. And certainly you can contact me at Transfiguration. I would be happy if there's something specific that you heard today that you would like to learn more about. I would be perfectly delighted to have a phone call with you or to figure out ways to get you the information you desire. The bottom line, as we began, I want to wrap and say, if you're in this position and you're wondering, is this doable? Can you do this? Can you raise lots of money beyond operations to care and maintain your physical plant? Is this possible? Yes, it is. We have been doing it. We are doing it. It is succeeding. It's incredible and energizing. So I hope you'll leave today feeling some fresh encouragement that you can do it too. Any final words from any of our other folks?
Thank you. These were excellent questions. We know we didn't have time to get through all of them. But again, Bill dropped our emails in the chat, both from Building Solutions and CCS. So we're happy to connect and continue the conversation.
Yeah, take care, everyone. Godspeed to you. Blessings on all your various work, ministry, discernment, and efforts. I hope it all goes well, and certainly be in touch with us if we can be of any help to you.